You see, to give you a more wider picture of what's happening in the Middle East, you should remember that Condoleezza Rice had called this the birth pangs of a new Middle East. In the 21st century, the Americans had planned to wage multiple wars in the Muslim world, in the greater Middle East, and the objective was not just to change the politics, but also the geography of these lands. And as you said, the appalling violence in Iraq and Syria that we are seeing for the last couple of years now, and especially the emergence of CIA and Mossad-backed ISIS, the militant group which has now almost taken over Iraq and half of Syria. All these are part of a larger war to create greater Israel in the Middle East. The state of Israel plans to expand. And where would it expand? It had to expand in the Muslim lands. The Syrians, Iraqis, Jordanians, Egyptians, Palestine, Saudi Arabia. If you look at the map of a proposed state of greater Israel, that includes all these Muslim lands. And now, when this horrendous violence was going on in Iraq and Syria, and the Muslim world was silent, the entire world was actually participating in sponsoring this violence and terrorism in the Middle East. Israelis thought of an opportunity.
Let me ask you this. You just mentioned that Muslim world, including the entire world, was silent. The question is, why is our Muslim world so quiet on this barbaric act of Israel?
You see, if you look at it, the Arabs are actually the battlefield themselves. The entire Arab world is in turmoil. There's no Arab leader left to raise his voice. I mean, would Syria raise his voice while he's fighting? Bashar al-Assad is fighting for his own survival. While Nouri al-Maliki in Iraq would raise a voice while half of his country has been taken over by Mossad and CIA-backed ISIS.
But we have Saudi Arabia, we have Iran. Why aren't they raising their voices?
You see, Turkey, Iran and Pakistan are only three Muslim countries left who have the capability to raise voices. And Iran is raising voice. Turkey is raising voice. But in Pakistan, as you said, in the interim, Pakistan's government itself is facing an existential crisis, and the government is collapsing in itself. So there is absolutely no government in Pakistan today to raise its voice for the Palestinians. And the Arab world itself is either complicit in war crimes, or they are so afraid, so scared that whatever is happening in the Middle East is now going to come to them. For example, Jordan. For example, Saudi Arabia. There are two countries where the turmoil has not yet reached. But both these countries are complicit with the Americans, are afraid, mortified actually, that this whole violence is going to come to Saudi Arabia and would come to Jordan. And this is what Israel is doing now. It's exploiting the opportunity.
So, Mr. Zaid Hamid, that's the only reason that Saudi and Jordan are quiet on this issue?
You see, Saudis and Jordan, particularly the Saudis, have made an absolute mess of what's happening in the Middle East now. They decided to sleep with the devil. They decided to join ranks and hands with the Americans and the NATO and the Israelis to overthrow the Syrian regime first, create the turmoil in Libya, overthrow the Morsi regime in Egypt. All these turmoil that you see in the Middle East, Saudis and Qataris are aggressively involved. And now this monster that they have created, the failed state, dysfunctional state,
you said Qatar is involved, but don't you see that Qatar is giving shelter to the leader of Hamas, Mishal Khalid? Then why that support towards Hamas leader?
You see, what is happening is that there is also serious policy conflicts between the GCC states, Gulf Cooperation Council states. While Qataris and Saudis have been united in trying to overthrow the Libyan regime and the Syrian regime, they still have their differences over Egypt, they still have their differences over Palestine, they still have their differences over various other regions of the Middle East. And Qataris are trying to emerge as the new Arab allies of the Americans, trying to replace the Saudis, and Saudis are not very happy about this. And so this is what is happening.
But then, Mr. Zaid Hamid, Qatar did support Akhwanul Muslimin as well.
See, that's what you're saying.
So how can he be siding with US and Israel?
See, for their own personal interest, because as we said, the geopolitics here is complex. While, for example, in Iraq, Iran supported the Americans to overthrow the regime of Saddam Hussein. But in Syria, Iran is fighting against the Americans to defend Bashar al-Assad. So geopolitics is very complex. It's never 2 + 2 = 4. It's so complex that it's actually mind-boggling right now that Arab countries and the Muslim countries, in one theater, they are fighting each other. On the other theater, they appear to be allies. And in some other theater, they're actually acting as neutrals. So what is happening in the greater Middle East now? This is what Israel is doing. it is exploiting this chaos and anarchy within the Muslim leadership and trying to expand into Gaza. You see, remember one thing, the state of Israel is created on the Palestinian lands. This argument that Israel is attacking Gaza because Hamas has been sending in rockets is so ridiculous, so shameless, so devoid of logic. Israel has been attacking Palestine since 1948. Hamas was not there in 48. Hamas was not sending in any rockets since 48. There are so many resolutions in the United Nations which call Israeli lands as occupied territories, which says the lands of Palestinians have been occupied by the state of Israel. The whole of Israel is actually created on occupied lands of Palestine. And Gaza is 1.7 million people, surrounded from all sides, from three sides by Israel. There's a sea blockade, the two sides, the land blockade, and third side is Egypt, where now the General Sisi is blocking the borders as well. So 1.7 million women, men, women and children and infirm and the old trapped in a huge jail and with no supplies, no resources.
Mr. Zaid Hamid, why no one's talking about this siege created by Israel around Gaza to make it a prison?
You remember the point.
Why nobody's exposing that part?
You see, the point is that the entire world is seeing the butchery and the slaughter going on in Middle East. But have you ever seen any leader of the world actually standing up to Israel and Americans and threatening them, trying to stop them from the... I mean, after the Mongol invasion in the medieval ages, this is the biggest slaughter going on in Iraq, Syria and Palestine. And this slaughter is sponsored by the so-called civilized nations of the world, by the Americans, by the NATO, by the Israelis and by the UN. So where would you go? Did Ban Ki-moon blind can't see what's happening?
But then, Mr. Zaid Hamid, we do see the role of UN bias as well. And like you said, that US is supporting Israel, Britain is supporting Israel. Why aren't we supporting Gaza then? Why aren't we supporting Palestine?
You see,
we have our Muslim end that is ignoring this huge.
You see, there is absolutely, I personally
here.
believe there is absolutely no doubt now that Muslims need, Pakistan, Muslim needs a Muslim peacekeeping force. Like you have the United Nations peacekeeping forces, you have African peacekeeping force. You need a Muslim peacekeeping force for...
Who can be this Muslim peacekeeping force?
There are three large
Muslim
countries left, Turkey, Iran and Pakistan. And these three countries are powerful enough, strong enough, even nuclear armed, to create a force which should intervene in troubled Muslim lands. For example, Afghanistan, for example, Kashmir, for example, Palestine. And if these three Muslim countries unite, then it will be impossible for Israelis or even the Americans actually to annihilate them one by one as they're doing them now in the Middle East. First they annihilated.
But then do you think that US will let this happen? Saudi will let this happen?
You see, the point is...
These three countries
will be
standing together.
The point is, US is actually acting as a proxy, acting as the bulldozer for the Israeli policy, destroying and dismantling the Middle East. So why would US allow us to create such a bloc? It's in our own survival that we do that. We stand up to the Americans. We make Russians as our allies, Chinese as our allies. See, this is called diplomacy. This is called geopolitics. This is called creating collective security blocs. World is doing it. When the world can create economic blocs, when the world can create military blocs, when Americans...
We are already seeing about that bloc that you are talking about, that US is supporting India in so many ways so that it can have one country standing against Russia and China by supporting them and giving them in the nuclear supply list.
See, this is what we are saying. This is exactly what we are saying. Three Muslim countries, Pakistan, Iran and Turkey, and if we can combine with Russians and the Chinese, will create such a formidable bloc. No power on earth can resist it economically, politically or militarily. We'll have the veto power in the Security Council. We'll be nuclear armed and we'll have the numbers to threaten Israel for that matter, so it stops creating this genocide against the Palestinians. See, the reason Israel is able to do that is because it has not faced any organized resistance. The only resistance Israel is facing is Palestinian children throwing stones at Markava tanks. And that is why Israel is able to continue with this slaughter. No country, no Muslim country has ever stood up to Israel. And all the large Muslim countries, Arab countries around Israel are now fighting a war of their own survival, except Egypt, of course, which is now ruled by a Jewish general, Sisi.
And then when President Morsi was here and he opened up the borders for Gaza, now we see that they have been shut down again.
This is precisely the blunder that Saudis have done. Saudis have actually been complicit in this murder and slaughter that's going on, and Qataris, of course. But as far as Egypt is concerned, I mean, Egypt is a Muslim country which has a border with Gaza. There are hundreds of people still stranded in Egypt. They're not allowed to go into Gaza, the relief workers, the health workers. There are aircraft coming with supplies and aid for the Gaza people. Egypt is sending them back, not letting them go into Gaza. So,
Mr. Zaid Hamid, you said the ultimate goal of Israel is to overcome Palestine, and then it will start marching towards the other Muslim countries. Now, what should be done? You said a Muslim force should be established in the form of 3 countries, combining with Russia and China. But do you see this happening as well? Because we are seeing what's happening from the end of Israel and US. But are we going to see what should be happening from Muslim
you see,
part
what
of
is
the world
happening
as well?
is that if you look at what's happening in Ukraine, there's a major civil war going on in Ukraine between the Americans and NATO on one side and Russians on another, and the proxy war is going on which has divided Ukraine, and the battle is ongoing.
And even Obama has recently put more sanctions on Russia.
On Russia. So there is absolutely no doubt now that a massive Cold War or proxy war between Russians and Americans have already begun. And Russians are trying to penetrate all those countries which have been traditionally American allies. Even, for example, in Iraq, which is totally US-controlled government, you see recently Russians have sent in helicopters and aircraft to the Maliki government so that it can try to retake its country back, which has fallen to the CIA-backed terrorists. In Pakistan also, which has been always an American ally, the Russians have agreed to sell us Mi-35 gunship helicopters for the first time in so many years, because Russians are trying to come close to Pakistan, and so that Pakistan can form a collective security bloc with Russia, China, and the Central Asian countries. So there is definitely power shifts going on. And if Pakistan had a powerful government in Islamabad today, we could exploit the opportunity, not just for Israel and Palestine and Middle East, but also for Central Asia, West Asia, and the greater region in which we live in. But right now, we don't have a government in Islamabad, and we are missing critical diplomatic opportunities.
Mr. Zaid Hamid, we would talk about the role of Pakistan in Middle East and in Middle East crisis and Israel and Gaza crisis as well. We have to take a break here. Viewers, stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back, viewers. We're talking on the situation of Middle East that is getting intolerable. Who is the key player in the Middle East situation? The situation of Gaza is going worse by every moment. Where is OIC, G8 and others? What's the actual conflict between Israel and Palestine? And what role can be played by Pakistan and Pak Army specifically in this Gaza-Israel conflict? Mr. Zaid Hamid, before we start our discussion, I would like to show you the clip about the British Minister, Saeed Warsi, former British Minister Saeed Warsi, who resigned on the policies of the government over Israel and Gaza. Let's have a look at that, what she has to say, and then we would like to get your comment.
I think for me it's morally indefensible where after 4 weeks of a conflict, more than a quarter of the Gazan population displaced, nearly 2,000 people killed, nearly 400 innocent children killed, we still cannot find the words to say we condemn this and that we feel that this action has been disproportionate. These issues are far too serious for us to have been mealy-mouthed and for us to be dragging our heels. I can say that there is unease on our backbenchers. There is concern at ministerial level. I can say very candidly that I've had one senior Conservative on the phone in tears about material that they'd seen and the fact that they felt we weren't doing anything about it.
A minister?
Not a minister, a backbencher. I've had a minister in a late night conversation talking about resignation. You know, there is real concern amongst Conservatives on this issue, and I hope that this move by me, this has been an incredibly difficult decision, personal decision for me, Kathy, but I hope if there is some good that comes out of it, it is that people who feel the same way as I do are now prepared to raise those voices within government and also are taken seriously.
Yes, Mr. Zaid Hamid, as she said that the government still does not have words to condemn Israel and say that its actions are disproportionate. How do we see it, and then what role can Pakistan play in all this?
You see, coming to Saeed Warsi first, her resignation is welcome, yes, but she should also mention this, that it's the British government which created the Palestinian crisis at the first place. After the First World War, after the Balfour Declaration, when the British government sent a letter to Lord Rothschild giving him the sanction that the British Empire is going to create a Jewish state in the Muslim heartland. And since that time, the slaughter, butchery and the bloodshed is going on in the Middle East. And British government, the hands of the British government, successive British governments are dripping with Muslim blood till date. And so it's very understandable.
Mr. Zaid Hamid, I need to ask you this. Don't you think that Sayeeda Warsi resigning from being the British minister is worse if she would have stayed within in the government of British as a minister and raised voice for Gaza and for Palestine? That would have been more effective rather than cutting off the one Muslim representative from that ministry?
You see, it's a call of her conscience, and I can't dictate her. Whatever she has done, she has followed her conscience. But the fact of the matter remains that the dispute of Kashmir, which has been going on for the last 67 years, and hundreds of thousands have died. Pakistan and India have gone to multiple wars, and even in future, there will be nuclear wars between Pakistan and India because of the Kashmir dispute. It was created by the British Empire, and so is the dispute of Palestine, almost at the same time. So the blood that is dripping from the British hands is unbelievable. It can actually fill up the Indian Ocean. But the fact of the matter is that British would never condemn Israel. They created Israel. They back them up. They support them up. It's the dagger that they pierced through the Muslim heart, as Zaid Hamid, the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, had said, that creation of Israel would be a dagger into the Muslim heart. And since that time, I mean, since the last 70 years, the Muslims of India have been raising, Pakistan particularly, have been raising voices for the Palestinian issue. Our founding fathers, Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Qaeda and Allama Iqbal, were the first to raise their voices, even threatened a rebellion and revolt against the British Empire if the state of Israel was created. In the recent past also...
Mr. Zaid Hamid, I'm sorry, you talked about Qaeda-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and we see him passing the Palestine resolution in March of 1940. When Qaeda-e-Azam did this step that long ago, and then we saw Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in his times, he supported Palestine issue really strongly, and then in the Arab-Israel war, our Pakistan Air Force participated in that, and they did kill 2 of the airplanes of Israel. So why today Nawaz Sharif is so quiet on all this issue? You think Zulfikar Ali Bhutto has better policies on Palestine than Sharif?
You take the Pakistan's history over Palestine. As we said, even before Pakistan was created, Palestine was a passionate issue for us. And every Pakistani government, even the government of Ayub Khan or the government of Bhutto or government of General Ziaul Haq after that, every Pakistani government aggressively supported the Palestine cause, even to that extent that in 1967, when in the 6 Days War, Israel was able to destroy 3 Muslim countries completely, Syria, Egypt and Jordan. It was the Pakistani armed forces and the Pakistan Air Force which was sent to Middle East, sent to these countries to defend them and to attack Israel. Pakistan Air Force is the only air force in the Muslim world which has shot down Israeli aircraft in air-to-air combat, and that credit remains to us. No Muslim country has been able to do that. And in fact, no other country in the world has been able to shoot down Israeli aircraft except Pakistan. And even in 67 war, in 74
But then
war,
why not now? That was history. They did good. But why aren't they raising
the issue
their voice
of Palestine
right now?
is equally passionate even today, but it's the difference of leadership. Ayub Khan was a strong leader. Bhutto was a strong leader. Ziaul Haq was a strong leader. Nawaz Sharif is a nincompoop moron. He can't even control his own government. He can't even control Islamabad. What to talk of raising voices on Muslim issues globally. He is missing the greatest opportunity that the Muslim world has today. Muslim world is searching for a leadership, searching for a leader. In the past, it was Pakistan which had this leadership. When there was Iran-Iraq war, it was the Pakistani president Ziaul Haq who went and tried to resolve the dispute within the Muslim world. When it was the issue of bringing Muslims together, it was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto which invited the entire Muslim world to Lahore, and had a conference of Muslim nations. When it came the issue of representing the Muslim world in the United Nations, the Muslim world asked President Ziaul Haq of Pakistan to represent the Muslim Ummah in UN, and he did. But today, Nawaz Sharif does not exist. Pakistan is the natural born leader of the Muslim world. We are the only nuclear armed Muslim state. Recently, there was a demonstration in Palestine where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians around Aqsa Masjid in Jerusalem were actually demanding Pakistan army to come and protect them and defend them. So every Palestinian knows.
So Mr. Zaid Hamid, when Pakistan army is seeing the leadership negligence on this, can't Pak army take some action at its own?
You see, personally, I would very aggressively recommend Pakistan Army to take initiative on their own. Pakistan can talk to the Iranian armed forces, the Turkish armed forces. Just recently, in the case of Mavi Marmara, when the Turkish ship, relief ship, which was going to Gaza with relief supplies, and Israelis attacked it. After that, the relationship between Israel and Turkey had gone very sour, very, in fact, hostile. And Turkish Air Force was actually flying aggressive patrols against Israelis at that time. Pakistani fighter pilots were flying along Turkish fighter pilots. So this can be done. It just happened a few years ago, and it can be done today also. And this is what we are saying. Pakistani armed forces, we are already training the Palestinians into our military academy. Even this year, the foreign graduate who has been given the Sword of Honor is from Palestine. So when we are training their officers, when they're training their cadre, we can also give them military assistance to defend them and to protect them against the Israeli aggression. Israel is only 6 million. And consider the population of Pakistan, Iran and Turkey put together. I mean, the figures don't match. It's embarrassing,
the armies
actually.
of the three countries.
It's embarrassing,
if the
actually.
armies unite of these three countries
That's what we are
and
saying.
offer help to Palestine.
Actually, we hang our heads in shame. The three large Muslim countries with nuclear armed
Zaid
states
Hamid,
cannot threaten Israel.
Then in this negligence, it's not only Pakistan that should be blamed for. It's Iran also. It's Turkey also.
You see,
and then both the countries have the right leadership as well. Why not any movement from those two countries?
You see, Iranians are doing to an extent all the weapons that you see, all the rockets and the sniper rifles and the mines and the missile equipment that you're seeing with the Palestinians, with the Hamas, are being given by the Iranians. That's a fact. Turks are raising their voices strongly again, but they need to do more. Definitely, Turkey is coming out as a very strong Muslim country and we expect more from them. But there is no doubt that Pakistan is the natural born leader and Pakistan should have played its role. And now, if Pakistani leadership is so incompetent and corrupt and weak that they cannot rise for the causes of the Muslim world, at this stage, when the entire Muslim world is being decimated, then this government has no right to rule. It should be removed.
Mr. Zaid Hamid, before we start and discuss the internal problems of Pakistan, I have one last question. Hamas asked Hezbollah for help. Why didn't Hamas ask help from Iran or from Turkey?
You see, the point is, Hezbollah is Iran. The point is, Hezbollah is in the north of Israel from Jordan.
But Lebanon is in a state of war itself.
You see,
it's already headless.
Israel is at war with two militias right now. One is Hezbollah, other is Hamas. And it is very natural that both these militant groups organize, coordinate and assist each other. And they're doing it. Hamas is, and Hezbollah is fully backed by Iran. Hamas is backed by Iran as well. And the fact is that while Muslim countries do not rise to confront Israel, these Muslim militias would, and they're doing it. And to a great extent, because Israelis have been surprised at the fighting skills of Hamas this time. One of the Israeli commanders have actually commented that I've been into Gaza before, but this time Hamas is fighting like Hezbollah. I mean, they were actually shocked and surprised. I mean, almost 40 Israeli troops have been killed, almost 10 Merkava tanks have been destroyed, and the kind of beating that Israelis have taken from Hamas has surprised them. And they're
but don't you think that when Israel do this kind of attacks on Gaza, they basically damage and demolish Hamas altogether, which they have accomplished in the past?
Remember one thing, as we said earlier, the objective of Israel is to decimate the entire Palestinian population, occupy their lands and territories. It's not a question of Hamas. Hamas did not exist in 48. Hamas did not exist after the Balfour Declaration, after the First World War. The objective is to create greater Israel and to depopulate Palestine. Israelis want to throw every Palestinian from these lands out into the neighboring countries. And Hamas or no Hamas, Israel would do this. It's only, at least when the Hamas, what they are doing is, they are not accepting the humiliation. If they have to die, if they have to be dislocated, at least they do it with dignity. They will not go down with humiliation.
Mr. Zaid Hamid, I have to take a break here. Once we come back from the break, we would like to discuss the internal problems and political conflicts within Pakistan. Stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back, viewers. We would like to discuss now the internal chaos within Pakistan. On one end, we are seeing PTI talking about their Freedom March. On the other end, we have Qadri talking about his Revolution March. And then in the middle is stranded the government, PMLN government. Let's see what strategies PMLN government is going to take to handle these two parties here. Mr. Zaid Hamid, like we said, that we have two important dates that we are facing. And we have August 14th, in which two political parties are claiming that one will be showing up with their revolution march and the other will be showing up with their freedom march. How do you see August 14th? What's going to happen then?
See, there's no doubt that the PMLN government, the Nawaz Sharif government, is now facing an existential threat. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And it will not be an exaggeration to say that this government may actually collapse in August. We may have a new government in Pakistan, new technocratic caretaker government, or a new interim government. And
Mr. Zaid Hamid, you have been talking about this technocrat setup for the past probably 6 months or 7 months. Now it looks like that it's going to happen now. But then the Article 245 implementation in Islamabad is raising some questions. Whether are we going to face a martial law after 3 months, or are we going to have a technocrat setup after 3 months?
You see, what has happened is that Nawaz Sharif is, as we said, is definitely in a panic mode right now. He is not thinking logically. He's afraid. He's scared. The massive resistance that's building up against him has thrown him into a tailspin. And he has become incredibly unpopular in the government because of bad governance, corruption, that he has not been able to manage the country in the last 1.5 years of his so-called democratic government. And the whole country is up in arms against him. And the pressure is building upon his government. He is behaving like Hosni Mubarak of Egypt. Hosni Mubarak at one point had become so unpopular that millions of people came out in Tahrir Square against him. And Hosni Mubarak brought in the armed forces to confront the crowds. Again, the Section 245, as you say it in Islamabad, that Nawaz Sharif has done, is exactly the same. He has brought in the army to confront the crowds, handing over Islamabad effectively into a martial law. And this is exactly what Hosni Mubarak did. And what happened? When the army came in, General Sisi, when he came into the Tahrir Square, he saw millions of people. He decided not to confront the people, but removed Hosni Mubarak instead. And of course, then he talked about elections, but elections threw up the wrong result. Morsi came up, so they had to stage a coup again, and now Sisi becomes the president of the Egyptian Republic.
So now what we are seeing to happen, like you said, that the same as it happened there. Now on August 14th, we will see Imran Khan bringing masses in Freedom March. And then we have Qadri bringing masses out on streets in the Revolution March. And then we have army waiting to tackle them because government have implemented Article 245. So do we see a civil war that day?
You see, what is happening is that Nawaz Sharif...
Is army going to raise their guns on the public?
You see, this is
if the public gets violent?
This is the blunder that the Nawaz Sharif has done. In the last 1.5 years, Nawaz Sharif himself has been waging a war against the army itself. He has been humiliating the army over the case of Pervez Musharraf. He humiliated the army over the case of the Geo network, where army wanted to shut down the Geo network and government openly, blatantly defended and insulted the army over it. He has been refusing the army requests for waging operations in the North Waziristan against the TTP terrorists. Army has been pushing him for it and he's been refusing it, initiating negotiations and talks.
Now it's been more than a month that their operation...
The operation has finally begun, but after so much of losses and damage, and army had to lose so much of men just because the strategy which could have been more useful in winters have now to be readjusted because the militants had opened passes, access routes into Afghanistan were opened due to summers. So Nawaz Sharif has been insulting and humiliating the army ever since he came into power. And now he expects army to defend him against the crowds, against the angry population. This will not happen.
So you think that Nawaz Sharif has implemented 245 to expect army to defend him?
See, this is precisely the point. Because what he has done is that, in fact, he has shot himself in the foot by giving army martial law powers in Islamabad. And now army is present in Islamabad. With martial law powers means the civilian courts cease to exist. See, civilian courts cannot challenge the action taken by the army. So army has the option now. Army has the option of either firing or shooting at the crowds or removing the government instead, which Sisi did in Egypt.
But will army shoot at the crowd?
There is absolutely, I can assure you with full guarantee that Pakistan army will never confront and shoot our own people. And this is where Nawaz Sharif has totally blundered without taking the army into confidence.
But if masses protest and they get out of control, then how would army tackle
You see, this we are saying. Army would definitely not come in between the crowd and the government. Army would stay on the sidelines and let the police handle it. And once the police collapse and the law and order becomes so chaotic that actually no government exists in Islamabad, then the army would make its move and perhaps take over the government. And this is now a possibility. Army does not want to get dragged into the political confrontation between the government and the opposition. Army will be the ultimate arbitrators and the final referees. But that would only happen if there is enough anarchy to justify military intervention. Even though army has the powers.
Will army talk to Nawaz Sharif to give his resignation as Imran Khan is demanding?
See, that is possible,
to
as I
resolve
said.
the critical situation.
As we said, everything is possible, but army would only do that once the red line of anarchy is crossed. If the Nawaz Sharif is able to handle the crowds.
As the developments are progressing and as we are seeing the statements of Imran Khan and Qadri, and they are instructing their workers that if police misbehaves with them, then they have the full authority to go in full threshold and, you know, react back to police. In fact, PTI has created its quick response force as well with 3,000 workers. So seems like that chaos will be there.
See,
if, let's suppose, the chaos happens, then army will come.
There is no doubt about it.
And they will ask Nawaz Sharif to resign?
There is no doubt about it. If, for example, let's take hypothetical scenario that there's a major clash going on between the protesters and the police in Islamabad. Prime Minister House or the Parliament House is raided, overrun. There's a burning, rioting, arson going on, and the government is besieged. This anarchy cannot go on for a day or two, couple of days. Within hours, within minutes, army have to move in to control the situation. And if this is the scenario, army is definitely not going to kill the people, not going to kill the crowds. Army is going to ask the government to resign. Nawaz Sharif should not have let the issues, should not have let the crisis reach this stage.
This deadlock.
This deadlock. He has committed blunders after blunders ever since he has come into power. And now he has to pay a price. Now he has already handed over his fate into the hands of the army.
Mr. Zaid Hamid, then if we compare Nawaz Sharif and Zardari, and we see 1 year of Nawaz Sharif sitting and standing and stranded in this deadlock, then we see Zardari. Did he do better?
See, Zardari
he was able to have his tenure for a full 5 years.
The tenure of Zardari was very destructive for Pakistan. There's no doubt. The chaos and the anarchy that you see today was initiated during the time of Zardari. The entire state has been bled to death through corruption and hemorrhage in the tenure of Zardari. But he was a very smart man. He was a streetwise, shrewd rascal who actually bought off everyone, who paid everywhere, from judiciary to the media to the politicians. He made everybody happy, allowed everybody full corruption, protected them, supported them, and he passed his 5 years looting and robbing the country to death.
So then this current scenario is better, that at least the country is not going to get looted by the politicians?
The financial hemorrhage is still going on. But Nawaz Sharif is enough to fight with every person, including the armed forces. You see, Zardari didn't do that.
But then now, with every passing moment, Sharif government is trying to build some contacts.
See,
they've contacted Sirajul Haq, they've contacted
See, what has happened is,
Fazlur Rahman.
What has happened is that Nawaz Sharif and Fazlur Rahman and Zardari, People's Party, they are in one camp.
Shehbaz Sharif is saying that he is even willing to go to Imran Khan's residence
they are in Nawaz
to do the dialogue.
Nawaz Sharif, Zardari and Fazlur Rahman are in one camp. And Tahrul Qadri, Imran Khan, Chaudhry Shujaat, Sheikh Rashid, they are in another camp. Jamaat Islami and MQM are in the middle. They're waiting to see which side wins. And
do you think that MQM and People's Party might join the winning side? They're waiting to see the winning side?
Jamaat Islami and MQM, they're both now waiting as opportunists, waiting to see which side wins. But army is the ultimate referee in this whole chaos. And as we are seeing now, in the next few days, August 14th is the Independence Day of Pakistan. And a week before that, the entire country would be, particularly Punjab, would be sealed. So many arrests have been made. So many roadblocks are being created. The whole of Punjab would be sealed, and there will be total state of anarchy in the largest province of Pakistan, and particularly in Islamabad as well. And how the things would turn out, nobody knows. But one thing we are definitely sure of, it's going to be anarchy, and the final referee would be the army. And whenever army feels that red line of anarchy has been crossed, then nobody can stop the army from taking any decision they feel fit. They already have the powers to do it under Article 245.
Mr. Zaid Hamid, thank you very much. Viewers, we talked about this tug of war going on between Qadri Khan and Nawaz Sharif government. What would be the result that would be out within a couple of days? That's it for tonight. See you all next week. Until then, Allah Hafiz and good night.